right, and we're live.
Ooh.
And it's not the fires of hell that we're sitting in. It's actually just a space heater.
Look at that. Look at your hand. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
It fits the Forbidden Psalm look very well. It lights the book.
I know what we should get.
What's that?
Recording kotatsu.
Oh, nice. Oh, that'd be good. Oh, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah. We can eat some Japanese mikan and that's it. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. We don't have one. Yeah. If we did, no one would ever leave it. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Although I wonder, we would probably save money. Since, is it a thing? Like, one of the holdovers from, I guess, being raised the way I was is like, you always shut the door when the heat or air conditioning is on.
Right.
I'm not paying to heat the whole house kind of thing. And I've become that person. And I'm like, can we please just, come on, let's please just shut the door.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's the thing in Japan. There's not central air. Maybe very new houses have central air, but so you heat rooms or air-conditioned rooms individually. So in the winter, you have a freezing cold hallway, a freezing cold bathroom.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Or you dig out a little space heater to put in the bathroom kind of area. Or if you're lucky, your apartment or whatever has like a heated floor.
Yes.
That kind of has like a linoleum thing over it.
Right. Yeah, so you get some
we don't.
ambient heat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
So in Japan, it's you take a shower during summer and you immediately start sweating when you step out of the shower. Or everything freezes and you have ice on you when you come out. You're just like, yeah.
But it's good. It makes you strong.
Oh, okay.
Nice. So, hey, Matt, how's it going? Good to see you in the chat. And thanks for the links. I appreciate the updates. Yeah, that's something I think I'll save for next week because I think it'll be a bigger discussion. And I already had a decent-sized list.
Nice.
So, it's something you maybe came up on Twitter already. And if there's kind of further developments, that might be good to cover.
Cool.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. All right. Yeah. That is a creepy orange glow. Nice. Okay.
Yep.
So let's get this going. Welcome to the Weekly. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Chris.
And this week on the Weekly, the TSR logo artist responds.
Oh, okay.
Limitless Heroes, a supplement for 5e. Dave Arneson's movie inspiration for Castle Blackmoor.
Okay.
And the Mörk Borg compatible bundle. Bundle of Holding. So let's get started with the artist. Darlene Artist posted a very lengthy response on Facebook after being approached. Oh, wait. I think we need the...
Yep, where's our...
Where is it? Where is it? Sorry, this is super unprofessional. Is it? No, it can't be here.
Well, it's also tiny. I don't know how you see that with the computer like a mile away. There you go.
All right. And it's not anime. Oh, do I have it set? So it's animated. Oh, there we go. So a further installment of As the Gygax Turns.
My goodness.
So Darlene Artist, which how she's listed on Facebook, posted a lengthy reply to TSR3, and specifically Justin LaNasa's approaching her and asking for her permission to use. So she's the designer, she's the illustrator of the the wizard head logo, the kind of classic TSR logo that they have been using, that this latest TSR has been using. And so she was approached with a monetary offer, I think, and some sort of paperwork to sign that says she's giving them permission to use this logo, and this is they need this or they want this to kind of justify what they're doing after the legal action of Wizards of the Coast,
which they dropped.
No, they dropped their legal action, but Wizards sues them for using TSR and specifically the logo. I think it was specifically the logo. So they approached the artist that did the logo that they're using, and so she posted a response on Facebook, basically saying, and it was interesting because she's basically saying, I don't want to get involved in this. I don't like what they're doing. But then she elaborated on her feelings about TSR in general, and it was very interesting.
And this is like not TSR 3, just
the original version, classic.
Right.
So so as we know, the TSR, they appeared again. Ernie is now Gary Gygax Jr. On some of the the things that they're doing. Yep. They still have a Indiegogo to raise legal funds for a case that they dropped.
Yeah,
but they are being sued, or they did receive there's legal action against on WotC, for using that a trademark that
they don't own.
WotC owns, right? Yep. So, so part of her response was directly to Justin LaNasa. I prefer not to be directly involved in any lawsuit against WotC. Therefore, I do not give permission to use the Wizard's Head logo. And the things that he was saying to her were things like, we tried really hard to do something good with the TSR and bringing back the past and talking about those sorts of things, honoring the past and contribution. Yeah, right.
Sure, yeah.
Right. To honor and remember TSR, the dragon, Gary, and all the alumni of the old days. And then, this is very interesting. Then she says, but I never want to return to Lake Geneva to relive those good old days, in quotes.
Yep, you could hear it.
Mm-hmm. So if I were to endorse the new TSR, this is her quote from Facebook, they have to correct the mistakes of old TSR. They must be kinder and more generous to artists and authors in their employ. They would need to show proper respect, listen to, and honor women, both within the gaming field and as consumers. They would need more inclusive and be sensitive enough to address the needs of the individuals beyond their white male demographic, and they would need to be fair to their customers and transparent in their actions.
Do we have like one of those gifs of like a mic drop that's like boom?
Yeah,
Right?
It was a big wow, and the title of her post was "The Power of No." So talking about how this brought up a lot of things, and this was very empowering. So saying no to this offer or this about her logo, and I think in fact it was probably work for hire that she did. So
Probably.
I don't know why they're approaching her directly to get her involved.
Well, like you said, okay, I'm not a legal expert by any means, right? I'm even on the outskirts of this, but like you said, I imagine they wanted some kind of proof they could hold up as legitimacy of yes we kind of do, and when it's like no you don't. So even if it was work for hire, which means she no longer own, like she kind of never did own that, like you can say I made it but it belongs to someone else now, right? That's what kind of work for hire does. So yeah, like I don't know if that would hold up in court. It was probably just kind of like moral support, right? And for them going, okay, the person who made the logo said we can use it and behind us, and just right. So,
yeah, and to follow up a little bit on that, she said that TSR turned from being a all-for-one, one-for-all company into an uncaring corporate entity that was us versus them in their mindset. I thought that was very very interesting. And
she's talking about TSR.
Yeah, the original TSR
prior to being bought by Wizards of the Coast.
And so this power of no that she's talking about was no to bullying and unethical business practices, no to the unfair treatment and compensation of artists, creatives, and women, and no to taking advantage of disadvantaged to profit at their expense. Yep. So yeah, I thought that was great, and I guess they had no idea what they were messing with when they just kind of approached her to here, we'll throw some money at you, and just give us some.
They obviously didn't, and part of me thinks, well, they're not blameless, but part of me thinks like they have blinders on anyway, so they probably had no idea this was going to come and be like, right? So yeah. It's like it seems a weird thing to kind of compare it to, but you ever hear that advice for like proposal? Like if you're going to do a public wedding proposal, you better be damn sure you're going to get a yes, unless you just want to be humiliated, right? Like you on a
jumbotron.
Yep, you didn't put in the work to kind of feel things out of what you were going to get, and you just, I don't know if TSR 3 did it publicly or whatever, but you obviously didn't anticipate this answer, or you wouldn't have asked.
Right, and it sounded like there was a little bit of back and forth, and they were trying to, we're the underdog, please pity us, support us. You get kind of a little bit of a guilt trip to try to get some attention, but
they certainly got attention.
Yeah, right. And so that was another installment of As the Gygax Turns. So yeah, it'll keep coming up. I'm sure.
I'm sure it will.
All sorts of funny responses to, funny. The way that they're handling things is just going to create interesting news for a while.
I mean, funny sad as opposed to
hilarious.
Funny
sad. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Various definitions of funny, not humorous. Yeah. My goodness.
Boy. All right. So back to more D&D news.
Because we can't.
We can't
Right.
avoid it. So Limitless Heroics, I think I called it Limitless Heroes. Limitless Heroics is a supplement for campaign play for D&D 5e. And this brings up something that we were kind of talking about when we talked about Oriental adventures or non-Eurocentric kind of settings, fantasy settings for fantasy RPGs, and it just made me think about this. And is this good, or how is this to be used? So what this is a supplement that allows you to create characters featuring disabilities, neurodivergence, and mental illness in your for character creation in 5e. So it enables players to create characters who have a number of symptoms that may affect various aspects of their lives. So 450 symptoms of disabilities, neurodivergence, and mental illness. And the intent here is to support greater representation and understanding within tabletop of neurodivergence and various disabilities. And they talk about dozens of people with diverse symptoms have worked on this. So it is actually like, people that have real world experience of this. And the materials that they present reference real world examples to better help players to represent their characters with these symptoms in role-playing games. And also with tutorials that discuss the whys and hows of the symptoms and how they should be represented in D&D 5e. And so I think if there is a player that has a need for this or really wants to, express this side of themselves or role play with this aspect of their actual real life personality or just challenges in their life, I guess that you would want some sort of formalized rules or something that would help you get at that instead of just kind of winging it, just kind of making things up, because it may end up being insulting or insensitive. But this material for people that it just feels a little odd and a little dangerous, and it may not actually be a learning tool, but just maybe something weird that ends up being kind of ridiculed or not played with very accurately at the table.
I think I can't really speak to the disability aspect. Like, okay, first I was like, okay, D&D 5 thing. Then you started talking about it. I'm like, oh, okay, this seems kind of interesting. And then my initial question was, who was it written by? Right? Because kind of like when you're doing anything similar to this, if it's written by, for lack of a better term, the in-group, then okay, I'll see it as a little bit more legitimate than someone who has no experience or is not of the culture of which they are writing. I see it kind of that way, right? But saying people were involved in it doesn't necessarily mean they wrote it. And I'm not saying they didn't write it. I'm just saying involved in is a much broader term than wrote. Right? But I think I agree with your point about this could potentially be weird is the wrong word I want to use, but that's the first thing that's coming to mind. Like this could be used as humor, right? Kind of inappropriate humor, and that sounds like toilet humor. But that's not what I mean, right? Like, I think it's what I'm thinking of is I'm thinking of a Fate supplement. There's like the Fate accessibility toolkit, which does some, and I unfortunately haven't read it yet. Does something very similar, right? It's here's how to present these sort of things in your role-playing games. And again, it's written by, again, the kind of in-group people. But I think my brain's just all over the place today, right? Okay, I'm thinking of another Fate supplement that was something like Deep Blue Sea or whatever. And everybody, you were like a submarine wreckage crew. And there was a huge discussion about one kind of person pointed out like, okay, well, you said people in a wheelchair can play. How are they maneuvering on a submarine? And the owners were like, basically kind of, fuck you, buddy, right? We want everybody and anybody to be able to play this. And it's the fucking future, so let's imagine we can design stuff so that you can get around, right? And the whole thing was, and I guess this gets into like future science fiction, especially like transhumanism and cyborg, right? If you present these things, especially in sci-fi or fantasy media, as something to be fixed, with either magic or tech or whatever, what are you saying about people who currently have those disabilities? You're saying essentially you are broken and need to be fixed.
Right.
And that's really not what you want to say. And I don't necessarily think... Okay, I'm sure there's some people who want to try role-playing this, right? Kind of as an interesting... Maybe that's the wrong choice of word. As like a challenge, or saying, right, I know people who have this disability, or maybe I have a mild form of this disability, or for whatever reason they want to play a character, a non-typical character. Okay, cool. I think it's more, or not more, perhaps better to say people who have this actual disability are not broken. It's just part of their lives. And to better present a more realistic example of people in the world, that's going to include people with disabilities. And it's going to come up. And so here's how you handle it in-game. And I don't necessarily know if that needs mechanics.
Right.
The first place my mind went was, unfortunately, Call of Cthulhu sanity mechanics.
Right, yeah.
Where it's like, okay, let's make a constitution check to see if your OCD pops out or whatever. Like, if that's what's in this book, then no thanks, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you said that about like things being fixed with magic or something, because they do also mention that they provide 100 magical items that are designed to assist people with these various symptoms.
That could potentially be a problem.
Yeah.
Or it could be something like, and I forget the creator's name, so like the combat wheelchair in D&D, where it's not like we're presenting this to fix you. This is a real part of some people's lives. Therefore, we want to reflect it in the game. Not being able to walk or having to rely on a wheelchair for whatever reason should not prevent you from adventuring, right? So it's not like we're fixing you. It's just like this is part of your character. So again, if those magic items are presented as this is a reality some people have to live with, so let's mirror that in game. Cool. If this is hey, here's your bionic limbs and ears and all this stuff and magic tech to make you normal, then no, don't do that.
Yeah, so this is being published by Wyrmworks Publishing. So it's a studio that's already dedicated themselves to representation of disabilities, neurodivergency, and mental illness already. So this is maybe kind of a project that shows kind of the what they've done so far, kind of a collection of everything done so far. So, and we're talking about this without having seen the actual text. So this is just the press release of this, and it made me think of that same sort of thing, like because we talked about like a non-Eurocentric fantasy setting being interesting because it could be teaching. It could be educational, kind of broadening your idea of what fantasy could be and what what a party of adventurers or whatever would consist of. And I hope that this could work in that same way, but I worried seeing like lists of symptoms, and they even talked about an online generator to create characters. So I mean, maybe it's just like a digital component of that, but it I just felt like this could go the wrong way, and it definitely could be used inappropriately.
We're definitely on the same page there, but like again, this is the first. Maybe people were talking about this on Twitter last week or something like that, but this is kind of the first I'm hearing of it. My knee-jerk reactions are only in response to this press release. I'll have to go and look up. But kind of like thinking about like NPC generators. If being neurotypical or atypical or disabled, like that's people's reality. So again, why should that not be reflected in random tables to generate NPCs or characters? But as you said, it could go real bad. Like I'm thinking of like, we haven't played it in a while, and I don't know if I'd play it again because of just the dice mechanics, but like the Ubiquity, right? Ubiquity in Savage Worlds, like looking at some of those flaws, I'm like, let's not with that anymore. Like, let's not with the compulsive, let's not with the obesity as obviously presented as flaws that you're going to get rewarded for taking with all this stuff. So if the character generator ends up being something like 101 ways to fuck up your character, then no.
Yeah, that's true. And hopefully they do come up with good kind of vocabulary to use instead of flaws or they have
hindrances. Like that,
It comes up with some good things. But I just worry just because some of the, tabletop experience, when people can just use their alignment as the kind of disruptive thing in a party for a game. So I can't imagine like what, bad intended people could do with, with mental illness and
kind of two minds, because on the one hand, as someone who tries to make games, I don't think it's the designers, like it's, unless we're talking about like board games or something like that, I don't think it's the designer's responsibility to present a set of rules that are airtight against bad actors, because they don't exist.
Yes.
Like you cannot make that. Someone is always, if they come to the game with an intention to fuck up your rules, they are going to. Right. So presenting something like this, there are going to be some assholes who take advantage of it. All you have to do is know that, and in the front say, please don't be one of those people. Right? Or if you're going to be that, just don't use our user supplement, right? Don't do that. But on the other hand, if something like this is not, if you're not presenting something like this in a serious kind of way to be like seriously explored as a teaching or education tool at the table, then just don't.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, if people want to go, oh, I'm going to be disruptive, well, just play the chaotic fucking neutral, right? Like if someone goes, I'm going to be disruptive, pick that, well, don't, right? I think ideally this would be designed or intended for people who go, this thing is a part of my life, therefore, right, I'm going to make it part of my character's life. Right. Or people who say, I kind of realistically and honestly want to explore what it is to have this whatever. I need some tools to do that. Okay, I'll use this book,
Yeah. So, if we can get our hands on a copy, I'd be very curious.
We've potentially bashed your book. If you want to send us a copy across the Pacific Ocean, with shipping the way it is, my God,
right. Yeah, but if we can find a digital version or something, I would definitely want to check that out. So, we may update if we have some further exploration. But something that I really love about the tabletop hobby is, and especially like kind of people's passion and love for classic, classic D&D and like the origins of the hobby. So DM David posted an excellent blog post about the inspiration and origins of dungeon crawling. Okay. Like where did this come from, and what is the first dungeon crawl that everyone kind of treats as, this is the origin of that style, is the dungeon under Castle Blackmoor. So that's Dave Arneson's Castle Blackmoor campaign. And there is no... So this is a very, very exhaustive like posting of every reference of this in every interview, every little, zine and blog and everything that's ever talked about this kind of goes through, and they narrow it down to, okay, in 1971, he said, I was doing this and was reading this and watching this, and I came up with the idea of a dungeon under a castle.
Okay, interesting.
So what the hell was he reading?
Right,
and he was not specific at all. It was very general. So they actually went to the old TV listings, and they went through like stories, like all the events in the Conan collections that he would have had access to at that time. In the early 70s, and kind of tried to pinpoint what were these inspirations. I thought this is really fun. It was really
someone
fun
who has a lot of time. I mean, like, this is awesome, but like, I got a kid. I could never do this. Right?
Right. So, So Dave Arneson's Blackmoor game was the campaign that spawned Dungeons and Dragons, and basically the idea of the dungeon crawl. So creating the dungeon crawl, Dave invented a new activity that transformed the campaign and ultimately made a lasting addition to popular culture, because everyone thinks of that when they think of fantasy RPGs.
In fact, if there are no dragons and or dungeons in your game, you're not going to play Dungeons and Dragons. Right?
Right. And some of the original players' immediate reactions, Greg Svensson said, by the end of the weekend, I had fallen in love with this game because of that style of play. And of course, Dave McGarry was part of that original group, and he created the Dungeon board game at that time, based on that, because that was such an exciting, crawling room to room concept. So to capture the dungeon experience, he created an actual board game based on that. So that was, almost simultaneously invented with the tabletop role playing as a board game aspect. So where did this come from? So of course we have things like the so the basic elements that we've seen are like traps or treasures in like a mummy's tomb,
Right.
or the orcs,
Sphere of annihilation, flattened out in a doorway that you can't see. Yeah.
right? Or orcs, the orcs in Moria. So the two influences. Well, the first thing that was interesting is the first piece of inspiration was the German plastic model kit that Dave used for to represent the Castle Blackmoor. So he said immediately looking at that, he was inspired. What would be going on not only in the castle but below, right?
Cool. Okay.
And so it was a Kibri Castle Branzol. And so a neat plastic kit, the quote is, a neat plastic kit where I imagine all sorts of fantasy settings, it would make. So the Blackmoor Gazette has a quote from him saying, and it was the first time he said that below the castle was where the heroes went looking for adventure and treasure. And he actually designed 6 levels of this dungeon below the castle itself. So when we talk about where this inspiration came from, obviously, so you look at both The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. So the Goblin King's warrens under the Misty Mountains, the dungeon halls of the ancient dwarves.
Right. Okay.
And in Lord of the Rings, of course, Moria. So the quote that gives us the clues on what we're actually going to look at is a local TV station. This is Dave talking about in an interview in 1978. A local TV station had several old monster movies, which I watched while eating popcorn and reading old Conan novels. So
way to multitask.
It was right. So it was then that the Blackmoor dungeon was conceived. Okay, so we've got Conan novels.
Yep.
We've got television in the 70s.
I'm
and
disappointed
the early 70s.
that like popcorn didn't become a bigger element.
Right. So the writer of the blog post then referred to the old, specifically at that time,
My goodness.
those stations, what he would have been watching. And the things that came up during that time period would have been House of Dracula with 1945. And there are very definitely similarities between Castle Blackmoor and Dracula's Castle. Things like
3 Vampire Wives, because that's all I'm interested in. No,
the laboratories and torture chambers and tunnels beneath the castle that lead to seaside caves.
Yep. Okay.
And then also things on the other. So that was the big parallel, and there was and so the things that kept coming up in the Universal monster movies.
Yep.
So that specifically did
They were
air
all
at
probably
that
filmed
time.
on the same set.
Right. Yeah. Right. And those very specifically. So that movie specifically did air during that time.
Okay.
So it was probably something that he saw at that time. And then talking about the Conan stories. So Hour of the Dragon,
Which is the only full length one?
Yeah, right.
Yep.
And so Conan is imprisoned in a dungeon.
Yep.
And one of the slave girl that gives Conan a map says, "Beyond these dungeons lie the pits, which are the doors to hell."
Yep.
So very specifically, Rogues in the House was also below the House of the Red Priest.
Yep,
So,
that's a good one.
Right. So it's the same ambience as a dungeon. The Scarlet Citadel.
Which got reused in Hour of the Dragon.
Oh, right.
Basically, Hour of the Dragon is a longer I gotta bust out my Conan knowledge somewhere, right? Hour of the Dragon is kind of like a longer version of the Scarlet Citadel, where he's under the castle and he escapes from Zaltoten and stuff. Yeah, that's a pretty creepy one.
Yeah. Nice. And so, this was definitely something that he would have been reading at that time. And so those combined elements, so Universal monster movies and Conan novels, and already with the existence of what Tolkien had kind of covered, created the tunnels and dungeons that we now know from the Dungeon Crawl.
I can definitely see Rogues in the House, because if I remember that one correctly, Conan goes there to assassinate someone, kind of gets tricked, falls into a pit, and with two other companions, I think, and they kind of got to work back up through the house. And that one's noticeable because it has things like the giant wall of crystal that's entirely kind of see-through to kind of put up gas traps where you think you can get through this door and stuff like that. And that one has a lot of traps and pits. And Scarlet Citadel and Hour of the Dragon, again, lots of pits and traps and monsters. And kind of start out as a dungeon. So here's, this moldering skeleton shackled to a wall, and oh, look at the bones. Oh, something's lurking in here because something's been chewing on those bones, that kind of thing. So
that's cool. Yeah, so all of those, I mean, and we're talking about stuff from like the 20s, 30s, 40s, all kind of like coinciding in
some drugs in the 70s.
Yeah, right. But yeah, in the imagination of Dave Arneson in the early 70s. So I think that's really funny. So the quote from the blog entry, Gary's so in the process, Gary's imagination and broad knowledge of sword and sorcery and countless other details are inseparable from the game, but ultimately the dungeon crawl proved so compelling that it took root in popular culture.
So what I'm hearing is it should be Arneson's name on everything.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It should be as the Arneson turns
right.
and all this stuff.
Yeah. I'm curious to see. There's recently there's a book that just came out, kind of talking about the same person that did Playing at the World, the same researcher. So probably pretty exhaustive, talking about the split and the contributions.
Well, what I also heard from this is like they were playing Dungeons and Dragons before Dave Arneson came up with Castle Blackmoor and the 6 levels that they had ventured beneath it. What the fuck were they doing? Right? Oh. And that's not like a negative, like, if the players in this game went, wow, that like dungeon crawling was fucking amazing. Like I am now sold on this game. Right. I kind of want to know
what
was it before?
What were they playing before is basically diplomacy. So they took their
sorry.
So but it was interesting that the evolution of that was so interesting because they're playing Napoleonics, basically wargaming, and then chose one general or one character, fleshed it out, and then they created the world of Blackmoor. And the first game was just basically the kind of political negotiations, and so basically playing it like diplomacy, where the GM is in the other room and people like periodically go and give orders and say what they're doing. And so they really liked that idea. And then once it was revealed that there's a dungeon underneath the castle, then we get what is more recognizable.
So what I'm hearing now is you stole that from Braunstein too.
Oh, right. Yeah.
What did you fucking do, Gary, other than slap your name on shit?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If you want to complain, please don't.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm sorry. Yeah, so that was talking about so all of this was kind of collected by Arneson, and then Gary played one of those games and became very inspired by that imagination, and that's how they started to want to flesh out Dungeons and Dragons.
Cool.
Because previous to that, they didn't have
Dungeons or Dragons.
Yeah, right. It wasn't Dungeons or Dragons. And there's a great in one of the comments on this post, there was a great quote about what D&D is. So D&D is an elf from Tolkien, a barbarian from Howard, a mage from Vance, fighting monsters from Lovecraft in a room that looks like it may have been designed by Wells or Geiger.
Yeah, nice.
And that's a perfect summation of all the kind of pop culture that coalesced to create. Yeah,
and now it's this very distinct melange.
Right.
Everyone tries to emulate. Like I would actually be kind of like knowing that, and I'll have to go read this blog post. It's pretty interesting to know what the origin of such a quintessential nerd activity is now. I would almost want to do some kind of like game jam or not sponsor because I have no money, but like, okay, let's go back and let's look at the original inspirations for dungeon crawling, and with everything we know about now about role-playing games, let's use these same ingredients, and what would it kind of look like now?
Interesting. Yeah. To take the same inspirations and find out like what would come out of some. Yeah.
Almost kind of like deconstruct it. Right? In other words, just put the basic ingredients on a plate and say, "Here you go. That'll be $100."
Right. Yeah, but still, so many of the inspirations are kind of boy hobbies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So but it would be interesting filtered through.
New idea. Take whatever the quote girl equivalent is of those things from the same time period and turn it into a role playing game.
Right. Oh, that would be.
I have no idea what that would be.
Oh yeah, that would be interesting because the novels would be very different, and the television, you would. You would end up just with lasers and feelings.
Maybe, I don't know. Or I'm getting confused with the gothic horror novel covers that are always woman in nightdress runs from something. That's usually just a hulking house, right? Anyway.
Right. Nice. But but I thought that was great. So I'll put a link to that blog entry or the blog post if you want to read.
I'm going to go read that because while I cannot devote that level of research to something, I do enjoy reading that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really fun. Yeah. So thank you, DM David, for that post. I will we'll
put up a link.
Put up a link and credit you on that because that was a great piece of writing. And one more thing, a bundle. So this is a compatible bundle. So it's the Mörk Borg compatible bundle, which means it does not include the original rule book. So you do have to have a copy of the original Mörk Borg to play. But this is the heavy metal art punk fantasy RPG setting. And this is a great bundle. But the thing that I realized is there is so much for this game.
Yeah,
There's a huge amount of development for this game.
That's what happens when you aren't an asshole and say,
Yeah, you're
cool, you like our game? Make something for it. We'll even give you, like, within reason, some of the tools so that you can kind of have a uniform look with the stuff we made.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I think
they probably won't see you into oblivion if you do something wrong. Yeah.
Right, or force you to post it in a certain place or sell it a certain way. Yeah, that's great. So this is a bundle of holding, and their starter collection gives you the two massive adventures by Adam Barton, A Box of Shadows and the Bridges of Moor, and the Endless Sea, and then two supplements from Philip Reed, Callow's Book of Monsters and the Tower of Scoundrels, and Richard Kelly's Fiskborg, which is yes, it is. It is the much needed rules for sinister and ominous fishing in the setting.
Like that could actually be terrifying. Like I don't want to know what you drag out of an ocean in this setting. Like just leave it wherever it is, please.
Right. And then if you level up to it started at $24.95. You get their entire bonus collection, which does include the books we're looking at here. So it includes Forbidden Psalm, two major adventures by Christian Eichhorn, The Vaults of Torment, Blood is the Fuel, and The Temple of the Kraken God, as well as The Masticator Gate from Skeleton Key Games. And and so this is so I guess I don't think it includes the expansion, just the original Forbidden Psalm, which was just plenty. I mean, this is an extension of all of another set of scenarios. So there's already a lot in the original book. So that's a lot for the.
What's the current level up price?
The game I don't have
that, but
it
fluctuates.
It's probably 20 something.
Up, so
yeah. It's probably still around 20 something, but it's a tremendous amount of things, and I'll post a few of the links just so you can see, a link to the to drive through if you need to get a copy of the original book, but there are also just the mörkborg.com has a huge amount of free downloads and resources. There's a Medium page which has they kind of document the first year of the game's development and the game's release. There is a fan site, an Ex Libris fan site, a Google Sheet with a comprehensive list of player and GM resources, and if you go to itch.io, over 300 titles that are set in the Mörk Borg
and
setting.
have some kind of Bjorg in the
yes,
title,
right.
probably.
Everything is, right. So there's a ton of stuff out there, and this will get you started. And I definitely think Forbidden Psalm, if you're into miniature skirmish games at all, it's a great, and if you like the dark metal setting, it's a great version of that.
We got to play that. There's so many,
yes.
I think 2022 is going to be like the year where I finally give in and say, okay, I said I was never going to get back into miniature war games. How many have I collected over the past year?
Right.
Sludge, Turnip, Forbidden Psalm. I'm looking at something called Baron's War, which is medieval skirmish. We've got all those games from One Page Rules, Frostgrave,
Silver Bayonet.
Silver Bayonet.
Yes.
Ranges of Shadow. I'm just okay, yeah, you win. No. Miniatures games, if we can.
Yeah. No, definitely. As soon as we can start, getting together more often. Yeah, so that's something we'll maybe talk about next week. The other way to miniatures war game online is had a little bit of controversy. So the platform,
that's what we got to talk about.
The digital platform.
Yep. All right.
For doing that, it said they're trying to be family friendly. So stay tuned. Next week we'll cover.
We all know what that means. Yeah.
We'll cover the little bit of controversy and see what if they did anything beyond their initial non-apology. Right. It was kind of one of those. Yeah.
It's not hard to apologize, except obviously for some people it is.
Yeah. So we're talking about Tabletop Simulator, which we'll catch you up on next week, and it's a pretty competitive market, so they got to be careful not to vilify themselves
or brand themselves as the site for Nazis.
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah, sorry.
So we'll see. we'll see how that has developed, and when we're back next week.
Yeah.
So where can people find you?
On Twitter, as always, that's Hivemind, HYVEMYND, where I kind of doing a little review of the Tin Helm. Nobody can see that tiny little thing, but Tin Helm is a perilous solo micro quest designed by Jason Glover. I think it's Grey Gnome Games, and part of the reason I picked it up is it's a solo dungeon crawl, which I'm already always interested in. It's card based, which I'm also interested in, and you can get it from Game Crafter.
Oh,
so
nice.
it was a way for me to check components and stuff like that. And it plays in half an hour. You lay out your little cards and you adventure through a dungeon, and it's all solo. And I think it's pretty cool.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, that's what I'm talking about most recently.
Nice.
So,
And the quality of the components is nice.
yeah.
Oh, very
I
cool.
really like the snap of the cards that the Game Crafter has, and there's all kinds of. There's a bunch of cards, acrylic cubes, a little meeple, and some dice, and it's just nice what fits in such a small
that's cool.
little mint tin component.
Where
So,
are they based out of, the Game Master? Are they U.S.?
They're
or-
U.S., but
Okay.
I forget exactly where, which is why it took so long to show up.
I see.
Right,
Right.
unfortunately. But yeah. So how about you? Where can people find you?
So I do a single panel gag cartoon that I live stream the drawing of. So that's Monday nights, North American time, and Abuse Cartoons on both YouTube and Twitch, and then abusecartoons.com if you want to see the website and links to everything. And the archive is on GoComics. So gocomics.com/domestic abuse. And if you want to support what we're doing here with the weekly, please visit upturntable.com. You can find everything that we've been doing for the channel. And then, of course, on YouTube and Twitch, Upturned Table. And if you want to become a weekling and directly support exactly what's going on here, patreon.com/upturntable. And there's various levels of support.
Weekling will never not be fun. Sorry.
Yes. And and on all social media, Upturned Table. So that'll do it for this week.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll be back again next week.
Little Mortals.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Nice.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, I didn't think we had time for the...
Yeah. And it is kind of still developing. And oh boy, wait a second.
Yeah, and I think the person that was most impacted by it did a good job of putting together a Google Doc of like every interaction and everything. That was the thing. I found that, and that was the thing. I was like, whoa, okay, we can't talk about this yet. I haven't read through all of this. Yeah, but they documented it. And I think it's got to be rough, though, because those mods, I don't think were very well trained what they were doing.
That's the thing, right? Like, yeah, what are these mods getting paid? What kind of training have they had? So it's not really an excuse, or it's more like a consideration.
Yeah.
I would say it's like, but also like there's putting your foot in it and there's putting your foot in it. But cool. I was thinking of just something that only popped in my head towards the end. No idea if I'd be able to do it, but how would you feel about doing Soul even possibly? Once my turnip stuff arrives, from Perry Miniatures, putting more stuff on the either Patreon or one of the channels, being like, okay, let's do a video of like either painting or conversion.
Oh yeah. I think that would be interesting. Yeah, all the conversion stuff. Yeah, we could get set up here with cameras to be able to do that. So we could just kind of sit and build minis and live stream it. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, especially just kind of talking through the game and everything. Yeah, that would be very fun.
Cool.
All right.
Take
Okay.
it easy, everyone, and
Yay. See you next week.
See ya.
Nice. All right. Let's switch over the chat. Hope that one-sided conversation with Chris leaving isn't too annoying, but let me take a look at the chat. So, yes, Matt, you got another installment of As the Gygax Turns about the logo. And, yeah, she really went after the good old days. Darlene really, let the good old days have it. Nice. Oh, yeah, Matt. So Matt said, that's a good point. So statting out disabilities and making a table for generation of symptoms and things. I mean, I think everyone's experience of their neuroatypical or mental, disabilities is different. So I don't know if trying to formalize those rules, I mean, maybe just creating guidelines, and hopefully what that resource is, having not seen it, of course, just reading the press release. hopefully they just give you guidelines for handling it and language and things to not kind of stigmatize people or make people feel uncomfortable about trying to represent that in a game. But yeah, if you're going to do combat wheelchairs and things like that, I mean, it extends much more beyond physical disabilities. So we'll see. But yeah, I have a feeling that it could be misused or make people actually feel more uncomfortable than they would have otherwise. Hey K5, how is it going? Nice. Oh, that's a great idea. So Matt suggested we have a Mazes and Monsters watch party. Yeah, one of those classic, like a total misrepresentation of that actual news story. And I think because some writer did like a true, it's not really crime, but did a novel based on the those actual events, and then it turned into a TV movie. There was a TV movie starring Tom Hanks, but that would be a really funny, a funny look at how D&D and fantasy roleplay was represented, at that time, and and I think that was like right in the midst of the Satanic Panic and the Jack Chick track about D&D leading to Satanism and all that good stuff. So. Yeah, it was just like, it's going to make you crazy and it's going to turn you into Satan worshipers. And the good old 80s. Yes. You're right. Yeah, it's a really young Tom Hanks and a very, very odd way they decided to tell the story. But I mean, they adapted a teleplay, a screenplay from that novel, which was a completely complete misrepresentation of the actual events of just a messed up suicidal kid. So that's funny. But there we go. There's another inspiration for dungeon crawling, is the sewer tunnels or whatever they were, the service tunnels underneath a university. Oh man, but and thanks Matt so much for the link about the tabletop simulator story. I'm going to go through. I found a couple more things connected to that, so I wanted to go through the person that was the most offended by it, I guess, that had the interactions with the mods, posted screenshots and transcriptions of all that conversation, so we can kind of see how things went wrong. And it really looks like, we'll talk about this next week, but it really looks like the mods had some canned response or something that they were doing that was a little bit odd, because they said, we don't want to talk about gender, sexual orientation, or other fetishes. It's like, what? Wait, what? How did fetish get into that? Yeah. So, and then it's a tabletop simulator, stating they want to keep their chat family friendly. I think on the internet that's an impossibility. I mean, there really is no way, even with the best mods and the best software in the world, you can't keep anything family friendly. And if you're just using that as a kind of gatekeeping way to say, because there was obviously a lot of not family friendly stuff on there, but none of it had to do with gender identity or sexual orientation, so that was fine. But yeah, I don't know, it's difficult to say though, because I mean, people so we'll talk through this, and I'm sure Chris has seen a lot on the story already, and we'll go over their non-apology and kind of how they're trying to handle things. And the thing that I couldn't stop thinking is, tabletop simulator is a really useful tool. It's well done. It's a little, ugly. The interface is not wonderful, but it's useful. It's great for prototyping. It's great for playtesting. A lot of people are putting stuff up there, but it has a lot of competitors, and a lot of the stuff available, especially through Steam, like the Steam Workshop for it, is not licensed. It's all, illegitimate, unlicensed things. So you can play, 40K or a lot of wargaming on Tabletop Simulator, as well as a lot of board games and different things. Some of them were created for Kickstarters or whatever by the actual companies, the original developers, to let you play test like a beta version. But a lot of the games, it's just there is no other digital way to do that. So it is the digital way to represent a lot of games, but you're using, copyrighted artwork, trademarked, logos and terms and things. So it's not a super legitimate thing. So them having this controversy is not great, because it's going to bring attention to the abuses that a lot of these a lot of the digital tabletop simulators are responsible for, and you don't want to bring those companies with their legal teams, looking in their direction so heavily, because I think that whole thing will just go away. I mean, right now it's a really great tool, and especially during lockdown and pandemic, you could play 40K, any army you want, Age of Sigmar, whatever you want, completely virtual over the internet with each other, because it's a way to just simulate a physical tabletop and rolling dice and measuring and cards and things. So it's a pretty interesting. I played a little bit of there are a few different games that I played, but I don't think any of them were official digital packages for that. They were all just fan made, and so it's good to support fan made stuff. And I'm glad that kind of thing exists. And if they're not making money off of it, then it's hard to, then there really isn't. It will be hard to say financial damages. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, Board Game Napster. Yeah, Matt. I think that's what a lot. But still a lot of, like I said, a lot of companies let you play their board game, which is impossible to send everybody like a prototype of a board game that would be interested in it. But for Kickstarters, it's a great way to let you play like a beta version of a board game. And but there's also a lot of platforms like Tabletopia, and there's a lot of those platforms. So yeah, they need to be careful not to distinguish themselves too negatively. But so it was a good story. Yeah, thank you, Matt. But I want to read a little bit more up on it, and we'll talk about it. I'm sure it'll be a nice and ugly discussion about that next week. So hopefully I can find something more entertaining. But so hopefully there will be a lot of real world miniature stuff. We really want to try Forbidden Psalm, and like Chris was saying, there's a bunch of other kind of the newer Napoleonics stuff that's coming out. So like Silver Bayonet or Sludge, a lot of the kind of alternative, I can't think of what a good, just kind of weird alternative skirmish versions or unit-based versions of miniatures games with a lot of interesting systems. And the cool thing is they're miniatures agnostic, so there probably aren't official miniatures for them. You're kind of be kit bashing and doing a bunch of really creative stuff to create your forces. So I think that's pretty cool. So let me wrap things up here. So thanks everyone for listening and tuning in, and thanks as always, Matt, for the tips and the wonderful as the Gygax turns logo we have for those segments. And I'm sure those will keep those will keep being useful. And so we will be back next week, and hopefully with some more interesting stories. And and we'll talk about the tabletop simulator little controversy. And until then, take care and be safe. See you next week. Goodbye.